are the creator and they are designing transformation. It's a great day to honor the legacy of great Abdul Kalam, who said, keep dreaming on. And I think one thing that connects all the panelists here is keeping student at the center of the learning spaces and reimagining spaces. I take this opportunity to welcome each one of them on the panel, starting with Mr. Samir. And as we were just talking, who reimagines the just not the spaces, but the progressive learning per se, and focuses on involving the curriculum, nurturing the student well being, and building very, very strong communities. Welcome, sir. And I also would like to welcome Daksh, who's a visionary leader again, who is actually defining the classrooms through real world projects, learning through video and storytelling. Did I get that right, Daksh?
Yep, 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 absolutely.
And Yogi, who I think throws challenges at all the educators to reimagine the spaces and lead the torch bearer of reimagining the 21st century learning spaces. Great to have you all.
Thank you, Anku.
Thanks.
The idea today is actually that today the children are just not the consumers of technology or what is being thrown at them. They are not the ones who just listen and take it in. They're not the rote learners. And our spaces have to be such. And our spaces have to help them reimagine and be the creators of tomorrow and today. So, if I may start with Sir, Mr. Samir, when it comes to spaces, how do you see students taking charge and how do you create an inclusive environment for them? Mr. Samir, we could not hear you.
You're mute, I think.
Technology is a challenge. Mute. COVID has left with some habits which die hard, but I think,
Yes.
thank you, Anku, for this question. So I think happened to visit one of the award ceremony here today on the way I was thinking of what I'm going to talk about, but also realized that, in a time and age when we're living, access and inclusion is not about having a seat or I mean, at a place. It's about having a voice in the learning. So at Shivnada School, our goal is fundamentally to dissolve these boundaries between disciplines, even between teacher and the taught, as the teacher and students, because everybody's a learner right now, right? Between also privilege and potential. So equal to opportunity, it doesn't come from uniformity. It comes from a design which is dynamic, which is intentional. So if you look at our programs at Shivnada School, they are built to honor both depth and breadth. And now we have an arts program, for instance, where students experience the discipline of staying with one art form long enough to develop mastery. They have to do it for 1 year minimum. But over time, they also have an agency to change their design of arts curriculum from year on year. So which gives them the breadth. Likewise, in sports, we do the same. Our technology program, which starts in grade 3, it's not just about coding. It's just about making them problem solvers. And by grade 8, students start choosing domains like robotics, programming, sound production, design, coding. And fundamentally, in grade 10th, they go out in the real world. Today, rather, we had that presentation. And it's surprising enough that last 1 week, we've lost very dear people, both 52-year-old as old as I am, to heart attacks, sudden heart attacks. And I've heard that it's 90% men who are losing this thing. So the children today designed a prototype which can predict based on arrhythmia and keep warning, to people prior to the possibility of having a heart attack or cardiac arrest. So I think fundamentally we've created opportunities for students, for teachers to come together, look at real world problems and solve it. And also we moved away from the traditional what do you call stage on the stage at teacher owned classrooms to shared learning zones. Students now use these spaces to exhibit, design, debate, and create. And our partnership with Civom is really helping us reimagine our physical design also. And that's an important part. In my last role, I worked in an organization where there were no walls between the classrooms.
Oh,
And
lovely.
such a resistance from all progressive and well,
Yeah, yeah.
well trained teachers to say, how can you have a classroom without a wall, right? Fundamentally. But we thought if the future of work is co working space, how can a future of today Or how can present today not be a co-learning space, right?
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing with Civom right now. But I'd also like to highlight fundamentally, design, physical design is a very, very important aspect, and it keeps reminding you where the world is moving. But the real transformation lies in the mindset, and unless
Yes.
mind shift doesn't happen, it's just challenging. So I think creating an environment can only stay inclusive if adults hold it with that belief that mindset is
Absolutely.
important.
You know, there's a famous thing that we say that in a children, we ask them, we create a little square, then we ask them, please color in the square. Do not go out of those lines. But when they grow up and they are in the corporate world or any other world, we ask them, please think out of the box. That's the gap that we are looking at that we really need to bridge. If we are asking our children to think out of the box, we cannot confine them to boxed classrooms, which brings Yogi in. Yogi, when this happens and children have to be their own torchbearers of learning, where they define, as Mr. Samir beautifully said, their own curriculum, they define their learning standards. How does defining the design principles become very crucial, and how do you help the communities do that?
So uh, before I'll start, I say, I walk a lot of schools. It's every week there is one or the other campus I'm keep visiting, and whenever I walk a school, I remind myself, the space has already been teaching. It is not that, but what it is teaching is very crucial. Is it the obedience or imagination? Okay, is it the control, or the command, or rather they're teaching the collaboration? Okay, so when you go there, in all of that, walls, corridors, school campus right away starts giving us signals. Been in this field for a while, we start having those signaling coming to us. And when I look at inclusion as an idea, I'd seen, and this is bigger challenge. When you go to classrooms, kids are silent. They're imagining something. So you can only make them physically present, but not mentally. However you try it, that's not possible for another human to put a control to another human, be whatever it is. Okay, so you can make them physically there, not mentally. To have that mental presence or that inclusion, for a rebel to be there, for a resistant kid to be there, for creative kid to be there, all of them in under one space, it has to have their own north star connecting to another's north star, probably. So this is where we try to look at. We have oftentimes I say, the design of schools which is based on corridors are inspired by jails. Okay, and this is beautifully done by Britishers, that to make this command control and making it an urgent need on those times for industrial revolutions. We made skilled workers through high level of industrial trainings, and that's where it started around. That's where the idea of Gurukul start failing on, that where we used to look at personalization of education, where teachers used to observe a kid is made for what, and that has been inside this campus. So how we try to look at all those aspects of humans. So the discovery is very crucial when we look at that, where a school really want to go to. Okay, of course there are changes of mindset, there are challenges of adults resistance. So at Civom we now working a lot on andragogy rather than pedagogy. How do you make adults learn and get the resistance away?
Yes,
And
yes,
which is very important subject in today's context, that if you can make adults unlearn the idea, or they can be co-learner in the same idea. I was hearing Vishnu Karthik from Heritage once, and he says, why do we make teachers roles as teachers and not as researchers? Okay, because if you make them researcher, they won't have a fear of failing, because as a researcher you are okay to experiment with that. As a teacher
true.
you have responsibility to write every time. Okay,
Yes,
so when you have this mindset change, you're okay to experiment with that. So this is few thing. Another design principle you try to bring around is getting the outside world or the dynamism outside world inside the classroom. Like Samir was mentioning about, it is no more stage on the stage, where teachers and students take their own initiatives. So how do we create those classrooms as a live labs? you know
yes,
uh, because instead of making it a competition driven, can we do not do a collaboration driven? Because our schools are designed to teach competition. There is a superiority, inferiority, a lot of gradings, assessments are there. But why assessment could be about a 10 pager which talks about the personality. So when you get upgrade to another class, you have you have come with every attributes of you, not just the marks. So this is what all of this. So how do you make this real world inside the classroom? So if you have
Yes.
those challenges thrown in, I think that's where the design would usher around that. So yeah, this is what I try to look at.
I think that beautifully brings in when you're creating an individual, you're basically shaping a human being and a citizen for tomorrow, as we all say, right?
Yes.
A good human being, and of course, everybody puts it in different way. IB calls it learner profiles,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Now, keeping that in mind, I think somebody who really what gives them wings is Daksh with their video storytelling, where I think it's an equitable platform, right? Whether you are coming with whatever language you are coming, whatever learning you're coming, you don't have to actually even wait for the four walls or even a wall. This is where the digital space becomes very equitable. So, what has been your experience in how children actually take charge in their learning there?
Right. So, thank you for the question, and thank you everyone for joining in. So, one thing that what we've realized is, and it is true for a fact, having met so many educators around, is that the role of the teacher in a classroom has drastically changed from a gatekeeper of knowledge to a facilitator of knowledge. When
Yeah.
we were kids, if a teacher has said this is east and this is west, then that is all that the knowledge is. So then I am not ever going to question it. I'm going to fight at home. My teacher ne kaha, that's east, so then that has to be east. But now, with the advent of technology, with the advent of information that you have so much, the child has already Googled most of the stuff. And eventually, when they're going to come, what the role of the teacher becomes is to facilitate that knowledge, facilitate how technology is used. And that's the sort of key role that the teacher gets. So how what we do at Fuel is that we get kids are already excited about making videos. They watch a lot of videos, and now their excitement is around creation. So what we do is we help set up a video lab in a school, and that entire place gets reimagined, where a project that you're doing today, uh, instead of making a chart paper project or doing something like that, what you end up doing is you make a project around using animation or vlogs. So I'll teach you how to vlog, but now why don't you make a vlog on types of motion? And when you're making a vlog on types of motion, you're going to question what are the things around me that are linear, that are periodic. So let me just see, is Michael Jackson's moonwalk a kind of motion that I'm going to be showing? And then you vlog about it. So we try to mix that excitement within the classroom. So what we realized is that until at least when I was younger, the extrovert public speaker was the hero of the classroom. Someone who could go out and present was someone who used to be, considered to be knowledgeable. But with the advent of videos, what happens is that even the introvert has access to a big audience because they can shoot stuff at home, they can create videos and then present to the world. And a classic case, in fact, something that I really always like to give an example of, is there is this creator called Mr. Who's the Boss. He's an Indian origin creator, but based out of the UK. And today he has around 2.2 crore followers. And the journey that I sort of, you look at him and you go to his oldest video, and this is 15 years ago, and you will see that he's not even showing his face, and there's just a camera pointing at something else, and he's just talking about paraphernalia, gadgets, and things like that. 3 years into his journey, 4 years into his journey, his first video where he is in front of the screen appears. And now, when you look at it, there are comments on his comment section where people are saying, this is not the same guy, because the kind of confidence that he has gained over time, the way he has been communicating has drastically changed. And so then your expression becomes it becomes like a means of expression. It is a modern way of expressing, it is a modern way of communicating. So video creation then becomes that stage which is not just about a gimmick of making a reel, but it is around communicating better. you reach an audience of 2.2 crores. So which means you are a public speaker who's out in the open, is speaking to 2.2 crore people.
Without the fear of facing them.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So you're not afraid now. So that's where we try to come in. So our entire course is structured in such a way where it's not just about the technique of video creation, but it also involves how do you write better, how do you open with a great hook, because that's what's going to get your audience hook. And when I was younger, I was used to be part of debate elocution team, so it was easier for me because my teacher used to say,
Where's the hook?
yeah, when you begin, and so maybe she would have not called it the hook, but she would always say begin with a big, big bang.
Bang.
Yeah, and then I would think of some crazy ideas to begin with. But now what we're trying to do is democratize the entire thing, get every kid to learn how to communicate, whether you want to make videos or no, you are empowered with this entire video creation aspect. It is something that kids by nature enjoy, they love it. And so that becomes a great tool for us to then segue into saying, now make an academic project. Now you've learned all of this. How about making a stop motion animation on pollination using this?
As we're just talking about technology, I think one of the things that's becoming more and more prudent is that technology is something that I think we all started consuming first, right? And I think creation started to happen a bit later in our journey. But I think with the students, the one of the way that you can make them independent and not submit to the technology is by reducing their consumption and making their creation heavy. So, Yogi, when it comes to you and when you're doing, especially spaces like the maker space, the tinkering labs, how do you ensure that the students actually have a very safe environment, a very good environment, which just does not motivate them, gives them access to resources, but also allows them to fail and create prototypes again and again? Because that's the key of problem solving and the 21st century skill set. It's easier said than done, but your space also needs to give the children. So, how do you
So
create such space?
see,
And I think Sameer can jump in by telling if they both are imagining or creating this together, because the
no,
smile on
so
both of them seems to be
uh,
telling me that.
no, so what happens is with the labs as a concept in a traditional school is in dying position because your experiments are predefined, your results are predetermined. You had to get that potassium permanganate dilute and this is in a solution itself. You have to look at this lenses and this will give you that kind of results, and you have to just operate that. So you're allowed to touch the apparatus and just record that, nothing more than this. We so that is where today why this whole idea of making movement or makers movement, tinkering labs, innovation labs, which is coming around this space, has to give them that kind of sense that it is okay to fail. So when you look at this kind of labs, we try to make them rough on the edges, okay, where you can allow that dirt to go, okay, in that messiness to happen. Okay, when you're doing with the wet areas, you can have wet messy zones where they can play with that clay, and the opportunities they can look at. So environment speaks the volumes when you talk about how it's looking to me. The ceilings are not finished, okay, because your project can be unfinished also. When you're doing it by hands, it doesn't may look like factory finished product. Okay, so it is okay to look at those imperfections. So I say we try to look at them little imperfected way, allowing that sense of you don't need permissions here. You don't need to be shoes in the in the libraries, like you've been silent. So here
Yes.
you allow to touch, experiment. A lot of things which we try to do is you don't put into locks, open shelvings, okay, or shelvings with a metal peak outs inside that, so you can visually see that, and then you have this curiosity to touch and probably work through that. Okay, so when you look at those simple detailings, it gives them that immense way to look at the material
Comfort.
surfaces, comfort, and safety. And another aspect of it is when you look at material which doesn't which is solvent resistance, which is acid resistance, water resistant, abrasion resistance. So that gives them that confidence that I'm okay to play with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Else in
In fact, one of the I remember here when we were designing a maker space, we had somebody from UK, and interestingly, she was a female who was working with us, and she told us that she gave us a band system. She said that a 4 year old child may be using a soft hammer, but another 4 year old child might also be able to do soldering. So let them experience the material and you go by bands, right?
Yes.
Each child, just like language, just like art, and other immersive subjects and disciplines, has its own journey. And the more you expose, don't go by grade 1 को हम सिर्फ grade 4 में ही हम soldering iron देंगे. She really broke that parameter for us.
And which is
She said,
important
let
because,
each child have their journey when they are especially in that lab.
agree. And I tell you, with kids, the very strong psychological factor is we start imitating from our elders. As a kid, the role play and dramatics of it is very usual.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
What they observe around it, they wanted to initiate that, and it doesn't have to buy their age or mindsets. It is just whatever they're absorbing in the environment they wanted to do first, because that's how our ego starts getting developed, and we want to connect to that. Okay, so that connection definitely allows that barrier breakage, and this is where I feel
Yes.
uh, this whole openness around it has to be looked at this way. We also try to get a very strong ideation area. So when you look
Yes.
at the experimentation, if there is no thinking, there is no ideation, there is no brainstorming, it is futile some way. You can, you have to have that zone somewhere. And most of the labs which you see doesn't have ideation as a precursor to this. So what I'm going to do, what kind of problem I'm going to solve around is needed to be built around that. So that ideation is space, and like we're talking about collaboration norms. What is collaboration
Yes.
norms? How many people can collaborate together? What is the right numbers? How do you get about this? So all this
That's
is
the culture.
that's a culture, which is what you want to bring around, and this is what been expected out of you in the corporate life or work lives, or in future endeavors you're gonna get to. So that's where it starts bringing around. So this is
I
few
think
things.
that's a very good segue to get Mr. Samir in. I think
Yes.
because yes, the space is the hero when it comes to such kind of spaces because it kind of puts you in the right frame, right? I will never probably go in a Le Meridian and eat with my hand. Right, that's the what the spaces have an effect on you, right? So when it comes to a school leader like you also have to balance between the freedom of all and bringing in the culture of respect and values of all. So how do you do that at your schools?
Okay. This is a good challenge of today, but having heard Dakshin Yogi, so what I was thinking was is making my notes. And I think fundamental one thing which comes out from both conversations was, uh, we trying in today's schools. I'm not talking in context of another school, but in today's
Absolutely.
schools, the education system, we're trying to solve the problems of tomorrow, which are unknown,
Yes.
unprecedented,
Yes.
unexpected, with the tools of yesterday. So fundamentally,
Yes.
that framework
Wonderful.
is very, very problematic for me,
Yes.
right? If you look at it, if you look at the World Economic Forum comes every 2 to 3 years. The skills set which are rising, and I've been following it I think since 2013. So recent reports is published 2025. So what they're talking about is collaboration, collective human efficacy, right? But what we teach fundamentally by design is a disconnect and competition, right? So
Individuality.
in reality, that's the truth. But I think this is where the journey of a progressive school comes. That while and it's very interesting because Anku, you talked about it in the beginning. Any progressive school, if you pick it in the length and the breadth of the country and the world, fundamental skills at each school level, primary, early years, the fundamental skills are same. Delivery mechanisms, the efficacy of the curriculum, we can, or the boards, governing boards, one can discuss and debate, but fundamental skills are the same skills, right? But what do? We break down those skills into the content. And what do you do with the
True.
content? We use content as a medium to teach. So this is where I think fundamentally as schools we have a flawed system. When I'm saying we, I'm saying education as a sector.
True.
So what we've tried to do is, for example, when we started as a school, we knew we don't want to focus on numeracy only. We wanted to talk mathematics as a language. So we picked up fundamental philosophy of mathematics, and that's what we teach, adaptive maths program. I think Heritage also does something similar, and a couple of schools have adopted that philosophy. The idea is for children to use mathematics as a language to understand the context in which numbers are born and used, and not just to see 2 is 2, 4, 2 plus 4 is 6, 6 plus 2 is 8. And when you do that, that collective understanding of mathematics as a language is not a learning which can happen in isolation with one individual competing with the other. That construction of knowledge happens between a group of children. And when that group of children can only come together if the physical environment is enabled by an organization like Civom, where it is mobile. You know, some methods, some ways, good old methods still continue to run, where the teacher will teach you on the board a concept and the students will have to go into the learning mode. So idea is not that the old is bad and the new is good. The idea is transitions between the two.
Yes.
Fundamentally, that's what we have to change our mindset towards. So at Shivnada School, we do, like I said, Frudenthal theory of mathematics. We use Professor Hans' mathematical way, which says mathematics is a human activity. You know, it's about organizing your reality and not manipulating numbers.
Yeah,
For
true.
yeah, and for our interdisciplinary learning, what we do is we use design for change, which is Kiran Beer's philosophy to use. And I was very surprised to see last our STEAM conclave what children, what was the best project, winning project which went, because child realized that when they go to the classroom and they sit in individual desk, the major challenge they feel is every time a teacher walks past, a colleague, a friend passes by, the water bottle falls. So he just, with the STEAM design fundamental principle, he just created a desk water bottle holder. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. I think today's kids, especially with the environments, they can surprise us many, many folds. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But as a
I
physics teacher, the idea is कि ये तो STEAM नहीं है, ये तो design है, right? So we had a good debate around it
हम
that
खांचों में सोचते हैं, वो खांचों में नहीं सोचते.
नहीं सोचते. So I think fundamentally, because the future of the world looks very, very different. When we talked about even COVID, right? The economist, the career like virologists and things like that, epidemiologists, these new terms came in. None of them could solve these problems in isolation. All of them came together. And it took a lot of time in which millions of lives were lost. But fundamentally, if you go back and look at it, if our governance, if our society is not compartmentalized into disciplines and rooms and rows and columns, what a beautiful world that would be. I'll leave
Absolutely.
you with that
Absolutely,
thought.
super in
In
agreement.
fact, I remember, and I have seen the makers movement also very closely. One at Heritage and here at Vidanya, and two examples I can give you is when was happening at Heritage, and I've seen an individual to a community. At Heritage, I remember the children, they were given this thing. They had, I think, My Body, My Life was the transdisciplinary theme that they were following. And they were said, okay, look around and solve a problem for your parents, which affects their health. There was a child who made a sensor which said, don't open, because whenever the mother was stressed, she used to drink Coke. There was a child who made a buzzer which buzzed whenever the mother went like this because the posture was not correct. And just go a little age high, and these were the children who used to put up Rahagiri, wherein they work to give the roads back to the citizens. So, yes, when students are given that opportunity, it is a very different world. And here, because this was a primary school here at Vedanya, the problems that they were given were a simple problem set which was given from lower prep till grade 5, that what is that one problem of your city that you will solve, right? And they were given parts of the city. So somebody was given a market, somebody an airport, etc., etc. But we realized that how observant they are and when they are finding their solutions. And the material at that point in time was cardboard that they were working with, a crush. I had someone who designed your carts, which you get in the at the airport, but with a seat for a young one, saying, "When I'm traveling with my mom, and she's with the younger one, that's the trouble she faces." I had a child who designed basically you have potholes. He said, I just want that it should be able to sense and tell you pothole, pothole, because when I'm going in my bus, it troubles me a lot. So yes, there's a huge, huge difference that children can make, and these are the future creators of tomorrow. And it's really, really helpful if the learning comes to them this way.
Yanko, I'll make one more point. Fundamentally, what is the biggest pandemic of the next 10 years is the social isolation of children. The
Yes.
family structures are changing.
Yes.
By and large, it's either a single child and a nuclear family left to fend for himself and herself or themselves, right? And their idea of social bubble has expanded, right? So they're very good with technology, interacting with another human through technology, but they're not very good at interacting with each other. Fundamentally, 80% of problems in schools today are emerging because of lack of interpersonal skills between children, which are emerging because of the social structures they're coming from. In this in this time, the design becomes a very intentional challenge, because if we don't force children to come together and sit together and have a dialogue and have a difference of opinion and a co-construction of perspective, we are heading for a doomsday very soon.
True.
Because
In
fundamentally,
agreement, in
challenges
agreement.
we are facing, and I'm telling you reality, 80% of my problems are coming from lack of interpersonal skills between children and their inability to manage. And then comes guilt parenting. How can my child be wrong because I'm doing the best for my child?
Oh,
I
yeah.
have given him everything, or her everything, or them everything. And hence, I want to create a safety cushion for a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, Baba, put five children in a room, let them fight with each other. That's the
Oh,
best
yeah.
education they
Yeah,
can
yeah.
get in collaborative ways. And hence, I'm going back to the same point that the design of older classrooms were not bad. They served the time when they were meant for. The time has changed, the social structures have changed, the
Yeah.
needs of the future have changed, and hence design plays a very critical role for children to just come and have forced conversation with another human being.
True.
Otherwise, there is no time. I think, and I and Yogi were in. I think we were in Taisi last year, where in Japan, people, adults have started living with a character than a spouse,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yes.
so we have to break through that, and design is the only medium where you can do that. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll leave pause here.
And I
No, no,
think,
I think it's very. So, point is when I propose an idea to a school for open classrooms or worldless classrooms, and we wanted to extend the community of 25 to 150, there's a lot of resistance comes because and this is where actually in the real world you're gonna get to have so many characters around you, and
yeah,
they're
yeah.
actively gonna get to you. So what Samir
Yes.
is saying, that this idea of finding clarity in the chaos is what we really need to look at and train for that, probably, if it's
And
possible.
I think Daksh, what we concentrated as we were talking last time around was we were concentrating on how you're helping them express. But I think in a way, you're also bringing them together, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, one of the maker spaces we remember, we always had a green wall, right? And I had seen children coming together for scripting, coming together for editing, becoming characters. I think the whole storytelling medium, which with your kind of platform has come to each and everyone and easier access, also helps them in coming together, what Samira and Yogi have been saying.
Yeah, in fact, it's such a bang on thing because what we do in the video lab is that it's not a individual project. So very consciously, we've made it. There are stations. So when you come into a video lab, there are 5 stations. You work as a group. Right at the beginning of the year, your group is defined, and that keeps switching every term. Now, the textbooks that we provide guardrails on how the classroom is to be run. So each session that you come to, one person each person is allocated a role. So today I could be a director, another person could be a cameraman, another one could be someone who's acting in front of the camera. Next time you come to class, your roles are reversed because everybody has been allocated roles. So we've designed it in such a way where everything gets reassigned, but you have to still work collaboratively. And in a classroom, while you walk into a classroom, there's chaos altogether, but the output is always beautiful. I mean, it might be raw, it might be however, but you can see every child, because typically, otherwise, what happens in something like this is that the leader takes over and says, "Main karunga." And what we try to overcome all of this, and in any classroom that's the case when you have a group project. So what we are also trying to inculcate through all of this is ensuring everybody gets a role. And then the last project that happens is where children get to choose who becomes the leader and who's doing what roles. So you have gone through that entire process, because again, in real life, leadership is never assigned by a monitor or a class teacher.
And
It comes.
choosing the leader is very critical.
Yeah,
We as a nation, it's a very, very critical, just not as
absolutely.
a nation, but the whole world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and so that's why you have to also learn how to be led. And for
Yes.
that, you have to work in a team. You have to work as a leader at various points of time, and then you will learn, like, who do you be led by, and what is the power that you will give to the leader, and how much you will retain in
So
your.
exactly. So what you are doing is actually getting what Yogi pointed out a while ago is getting the real world experiences in, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
And while
And
doing so,
Can I
uh,
add
all
one?
of, yes,
Yes.
yes,
No, no, please, please,
yeah.
Lakshya, finish. I just want to
So
make one difference opinion with Anku, which he's focusing a lot on, but I'll do that after
sure, always, sir.
while they are doing so, they're also working on academics. So we know that they're working toward using technology, using a 20th century skill of communication through video creation. But they're also making academic projects. And if you just look around the landscape, or the kind of content that at least I consume and a lot of my peers consume, I follow a doctor, I follow a physiotherapist, I follow people who are in law. So it's not as though there's a just content is being created by people who entertain. It is not the television of the world. It is content gets created by people from all walks of life. So you might be a great, you know, academic also, but still you have to communicate to the larger world, and that's what we try to empower through all of this. A funny example is that we I know very proactive kid, she came to our office and said, I want to intern with you. She'd gone through our website and she said, I want to intern with. This is a kid who just passed out of 10th and comes in and asks, I want to intern with you. And then she had one round of interview with us where she was asking us dangerous questions, and then we had to satisfy her. And then she joined in. Incidentally, what happened is that around 8th, I think she had a choice to take up arts, and so she had taken up arts, and she used to intern with us. So she, along with my team, we were making a sample video for kids around. There's a small reel that we help children make around a reaction where you put in acetic acid and salt, and then it looks like snow. So it was a reel on how do you make slow, and it was just to nudge children that this is how you could do a reaction, but the reel is around how you ended up making snow. So now she comes running to me at the end of the shoot, and she says, do you know NaCl, that you the salt that you eat, it's actually sodium chloride. I said, मुझे तो हमेशा से पता था. But the thing is that because she was excited about the reel, she went ahead and actually thought about it, read about it,
Dive much deeper.
Yes.
and then collaborated with the people, because someone else who's helping her make that reel is telling her, see, this is NaCl and this is sodium chloride and this is acidic. Now what
Wonderful.
you get is sodium acetate. And now she's wanting to me. I said, mujhe pata hai. But that's the beauty of collaborating together and making together, is because then you are trying to apply your mind. Then you have people who don't know, and then you have people who know one thing or the other, and together then that leads to creation. And I think Dr. Kalam
And,
also mentioned something on similar lines where, and I
and I think what it does is when we say lifelong learners, and that's what Dr. Kalam always was, that it actually creates love for learning.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you're able to create love for learning,
yeah,
then uh, finding solutions becomes a part of who you are. So
yeah.
you wanted to disagree on something. Please go ahead.
I think I've heard this word makerspace so much. My colleague Vinita is beating me out, saying that you have to make a space in school. But fundamentally, I also say, I'm also thinking through this conversation
Yeah,
that children are making meaning of everything in a collaborative environment all the time. So every learning space is a maker space in the school.
true.
Fundamentally, you can put machineries in one corner and tag it as a
Absolutely.
lab, but I think maker space, every corner of the school, every corner of the building has to become a maker space
Rightfully said, sir.
filled with
Yeah.
with an idea or a jigsaw or something to fiddle with and say, hey, I'm going to make meaning of this.
I
So just
completely agree, sir. I would rephrase myself to say that design thinking should be part of the culture rather than the maker
Yeah,
space.
absolutely,
I
sir. And
stand corrected, rightfully
yeah,
so.
and I'll just like to add to that, and this is something that a lot of my friends, who say you were running a startup, what kind of schools are you working? When I explained what I do, and they said, do you work with the fanciest of Ivy schools? And this is where I'm also picking from Samir sir, is that you wouldn't believe some of the schools that we work with are, you would not have thought, like 100 kilometers away from Pune, there's a village. And in that village, amongst sugarcane fields, you find one large expanse of land and there's a school there. And that school also works with it because it's the mindset. So it's
Yeah.
about how progressively you can think, how you can empower children. And then there are the fancy Ivy schools also that we end up working with. So it's about how you take that space and make it something into something
True.
meaningful.
And
Yes,
you,
so I would put on Daksh's thought process that, see, when we work as an organization, when I go and approach schools, the excitement is not about an IB school or a Cambridge school. Its excitement is about what is that openness to change,
Absolutely.
the willingness to look for learners, because in this case, learners are not decision makers. you know that's a very pity, because if I would be choosing a space for myself, I would pick the chair which I'm looking, which is looking right to me, or maybe sitting in different postures. But in this context, it is not right. So it's one of the industry where we as a bigger adults has to take the responsibility of thinking right for them, be it a designer, architect, school owners, decision makers, or people like us. All of us to come down to think for that learner in that context. So very, very important perspective.
Yeah, it's a beautiful point that you make. Yeah.
we do take in charge of those learners and for a long while, right?
Hmm.
Let me throw as a closing comment to all of you, if you were to design that one space which you feel is child centric and absolutely gives freedom and more power to your dreams, what are those key things that you would love to have in? Let's start with you, sir. Smear.
Okay, I think space is an idea of dysfunction, because you can have any space and not use it to teaching and learning, because fundamentally it's a very the classroom is a very antidote to the learning process, because learning in a social process, and classroom is a factory model, which is
True.
but we
True.
call it a learning
Very
space,
true.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I think fundamentally, if I were to look at a space, I won't look at a space. I would say fundamentally, you will have to replace the mindset of perfect scores with the pursuit of purpose. And the purpose has to be collective good. And that's how school like ours turn learners into creators who can lead with integrity and imagination. So imagination cannot happen in box. Imagination can only happen in where I decide and choose how my environment would be. And sometimes the teacher who's a co-learner with me can decide it has to be in rows and columns, and it's fine. But that flexibility of mobility and time and space and content should design how the learning environment is in the class, and not one standard environment. So my ideal space is a mindset uh, with
Lovely.
with some design features of the flexibility, which formed us beautifully, and that's my idea of an ideal works learning
A
space.
mindset which is as flexible as the space.
Yes.
On
I'll
to
just
you.
give you one more statement. I remember a couple
Sure,
of
sure.
years back, I went to Stanford and I went to the admission officer. So I told my student, I said, I'll end up being here, so I might just want to visit. And I have about 40 students with me. I'll be very happy to meet the admissions officer or dean of admissions. And I met that person, gentleman. He called me in the office and I say, look, we don't have a space which is accessible right now to me. There are thousands of rooms here, but the space is not accessible to me. Would you mind if I talk to your children about under a tree? This was very uncanny. And he says Stanford is all about open mindset and open spaces. So that's what I want to mark it about. So,
Absolutely.
you
It's a
know,
lovely, lovely thought
yes. Thank
and
you.
a great example to look forward to.
Thank you.
Yogi.
So I was speaking from Daksh's thought. They look at movie making and all of this. One of very interesting thought I talk to a lot of people is the future of work is more like Bollywood way. you know and I'd explain how. But There are few people in studio, because I will looking at from asset light to people light models in future. So you'll have a studio, 3 4 key people. You figure out script, you figure out cinematographer, directors, actors, and make a project and release it, and then you may not work together in future, and you may work together in future. So world is going to be like this. That's where freelancing is becoming a critical approach. Making is becoming critical approach. Teaming is a critical approach today. Purpose seeking is a critical approach today. So today, like we interview our candidates. Candidate introduce us a lot. Okay, so if you don't have a purpose as an organization, people don't want to join you. Okay, the world is moving that kind of direction. So where I feel the kind of space or the community I would probably try to create is having livingness inside it. It's a real life platform, like Samin mentioned about that. Every space has to be with that mindset, so it has to allow for those kind of openness. Of course there could be lines with as a co learner, teachers could put and draw, because they know that person better. But I think if I look at Gurukul, and I get a lot of inspiration from Gurukul, that the whole idea of making caste systems came from communities. When you're good at working with woods, then they created that community. Then iron smith or blacksmith or all of that, goldsmiths, they came as a community based on their skills and intention and love for that subject, and which eventually become a caste system. So
True.
think about the impact of that kind of thinking. So if as a co-creator, a co-learner, teacher, or a observer could see that kind of passion and ignite that between that spaces, is where it should be. So for me, I would look at I would put it this way: that don't just build schools for teaching, build them for discovering. That's where I get my personal discovery. It is self-elevation process, not an process for occupation. So if you can build around that, that's a beautiful thing which you can do.
Daksh.
Yeah, so I'll again borrow from Dr. Kalam
Kalamji.
as well. Yeah. So I remember in Ignited Minds, he had written that, some child asked me who's the first scientist. And Dr. Kalam answered that the first scientist is a child, because the scientist's basic role is to ask questions. And
Yes.
if you can ask questions right, then a child is who better a scientist than a child, because you are the one who's going to be constantly asking questions. So if we can create, and this is just basics. So while we might have advanced and there might be 1,000 theories around, how education should happen, at the heart is if you can create a space where child can ask questions, has voice, has choice. That is what that essential thing. That's the core to the space that you would want. And so for me, that essentially all through my, like, I was lucky enough to be in a school, despite this being a while now, where I used to be that pesky kid who used to always raise his hand and ask a lot of questions. And I'm sure all my classmates would have thought, what is this guy? Every time he has some questions. And there have been times that I've had that judgment about others. But
We used to name them question marks.
yeah, yeah, that's the thing. I'm sure that would have been a
So,
name for me. But the thing is that a lot of role that it has played in my life has been because I've been enabled, empowered enough to ask questions. So whatever space it is, in whatever shape and form, it has to still enable asking of questions, and I feel that's something that really helps. And then that leads to creativity. And again,
Indeed.
I'll just end this by quoting Dr. Kalam again. And this time I've noted it down because I thought I'll forget, so I'll might as well.
Absolutely.
So he says learning gives creativity, but creativity leads to thinking, and thinking provides knowledge, and knowledge makes you great. And that I feel sort of sums it up in terms of how I look at it.
True. And I think what I take away from hearing all of you is we've been talking about empowering the students as creators from spaces and environments. I think the spaces and environments that we've all talked about are just not the physical environments or the digital environment. It is a culture which is basically empowered by really, really progressive minds and mindsets who create systems of tomorrow, right? For the learners to thrive as they go up, right? And then imagining spaces becomes much, much easier. And then you don't have a resistance to a free space or a space without walls or with walls, right?
No, it's a
So,
beautiful, because I think as a human we have innate nature to curiosity, and if we can build that allowance for, let it be human, you
yeah.
know, rather putting a control or command to that, that's where it can lead to
Yes.
beautiful.
Let's give them happiness with the bye.
Yes,
Right? As the
yes,
famous movie is.
yes.
Are there any questions from the audience, or we would love to wrap
Abhilash
this up?
probably at the big stage. Is there
Abhilash,
something?
is there anything?
I think we've covered them all.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure to have this
Thank you.
conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you, thank you,
Bye.
thank
Thank
you,
you. Bye.
thank you, everyone.